So Chris, before we jump in and talk about the story of Octopus, tell us how your story started. Where did you grow up?
So I was born in Hampshire, grew up in Surrey, where I lived most of my life, other than 3 years that I had living in Tokyo in Japan in the late 1980s, which at that time very few people got the opportunity, certainly coming from a UK suburban background, to live abroad. And I think really for me that was a big factor in what helped change my perspective about the world and made me realize that there was a sort of bigger world out there, and that really piqued my interest. My dad was working for Midland Bank, now HSBC, where he worked all his career. And that experience of living in Tokyo during a boom era, hearing my dad talk about business, that to me was a big part of what triggered my initial interest in business. Came back to live in Surrey, then went to uni, moved to London, worked for 3 years before we set up Octopus, and it's sort of grown from there, really.
And so you've been living in Japan. Do you speak in Japanese?
30 years ago, I spoke a little bit. Okay. It's been a long time. I was back in Tokyo recently for the first time since 1989, and you can kind of understand a bit about what's going on around you when people speak, but yeah, my own Japanese pretty poor now.
Now, you started Octopus in 2000, and there were a group of people which nobody had been very old. You were 23, right?
Yep, I was, yeah. So people thought we were pretty crazy. You know, there weren't facilities like this amazing kind of environment, absolutely fantastic. It makes it so much easier to start a business when there's desk space available, when there's like-minded communities out there, when there are lots of angel networks. And that was all far more in its infancy 18 years ago. So we were young, we were very naive. We'd worked for 2.5 years at a large fund management company. Great place to learn, but about investing in shares doesn't really teach you how to build a business. And we somewhat naively thought fund managers would make great business builders. And so we had to learn the hard way. Very quickly realized when we started out in my lounge that we were just not fully equipped with everything we needed. We were going to have to do it the hard way. But also at that age, you don't have any fear. And I think that was also really important. And I think our age played to our advantage, really, and was what helped us not have any shame in picking up the phone to people. You know, we essentially had one laptop, a copy of the Yellow Pages, one phone line. And so we went through the Yellow Pages. I'm not sure if it even still exists now, but we had that thick Yellow Pages on the floor of my lounge. We went through it trying to find people we could call up to tell them what we were trying to do and see if they'd be willing to back us. And we spent a year doing that. It made us grow up. Made us realize the importance of communication, of how to tell our story, and also that passion and determination, those kind of factors are absolutely critical. If you don't have that kind of mindset, if you're going to give up really quickly, then setting up a business isn't really going to work. You have to accept it's going to be a long slog. We had to get our girlfriends to pay the rent for our flats for the first year because we weren't earning any money. And we were so young, didn't really have any savings. So all of those kind of things, you toughen up pretty quick when you go through that. And that was, I think, really powerful for the kind of mindset we've always brought through the business over the past 18 years in terms of how we tried to grow it as well.
You know, we had about 3.5 years ago here on stage the founder of Metro Bank, and he was about 27 when he started Metro Bank. When he started a bank which he then sold for 8.5 billion and came to the UK to start a Metro Bank. And I thought it's young, 27. You were 23. Like respect, because it's really young to be starting a big company like this and succeed.
Well, I guess when you start a business, so you don't know where it's going to go. Your primary objective is just to get the business up and running, raise money, start things off, and day by day you get on and do that. And every business evolves. So to say that what we have now in the business is what we anticipated back then, that just isn't the case. Some parts of what we do are absolutely the case. So we always had a passion for UK smaller companies. We wanted to build a financial business that could help invest in unquoted and quoted smaller businesses, and that is a meaningful part of what we do, but it's probably 10% of what our fund management business does. All the other things are areas we've gone into over the years, and to me the sort of flexibility, the willingness to try things and accept they may not work, but if they do, to then scale them really quickly is always very important.
Now you mentioned that you are passionate about small business. We are also passionate about having as many questions you have answered, and you can help us. What you can do is very simple. You see the screen behind us. All you have to do if you want to ask a question, you just take out your mobile phone and open your browser. No need to download any app. And in the browser, you just type in slido.com. That's it. It's so simple. And the hashtag you can use is what you can see here, SG Europe. And this event will pop up, and you can just ask away whatever you want to know. We'll be talking now for about 45 minutes with Chris, and you can jump in with the questions. And I promise the most popular questions will be answered, and you will decide which ones, because you can vote for questions you like. So feel free to jump in and ask away. Chris, when you were starting, there was no co-working space like WeWork, and the first office you had was in your lounge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had nowhere to go. I think now, as I'm sure many of you have experienced, there's such a choice, there's such a vibrant community out there, and it makes it a lot easier. We had everyone telling us, what on earth are you doing? Why are you leaving your job in a big company where you kind of get paid pretty well for what you do? Why do you want to give that up? And people told us what we're trying to do would never work, and we still hear that now every time we try and do something new, actually. But the fabric is absolutely fabulous. I think these kind of facilities, it's the communication, the interaction, the way ideas transfer, the opportunity to learn from people. Every time I meet somebody who runs another business, you kind of learn something new from talking to them, and that's as powerful today as it's ever been. And I think if we had our time again and we were starting a business now today, I think we probably wouldn't waste so much time that we did in the first year or two as we're trying to learn and find the right people. I think we'd have grown the business more quickly in that early period. We'd have got better advice. We'd have been surrounded by people who were trying to do things rather than just telling us it wouldn't work. So I think the fabric of the ecosystem is so much more powerful. We see that also not just ourselves, but in the businesses that our ventures team invests into. I think entrepreneurs in London now are way more ambitious than they were 10 or 15 years ago, because they've got access to a different type of opportunity. They can scale their businesses more quickly, and that, I think, is a real strength that London has developed, and something we're really keen to keep on backing entrepreneurs through our ventures team, and also take advantage of opportunities to grow our own business. It's way easier to hire people now coming out of university, or young people looking to change their career. Entrepreneurship is right up there in what people want to do now.
That's true.
It just wasn't 20 years ago. All my friends from university went to become management consultants, bankers, lawyers, accountants, or fund managers pretty much. No one really went to set up a business. Now, if you look at what their ambitions are, lots of people go and join a startup or an early stage company, or they want to do something different and more exciting. And I think that is one of the big changes that we should be really proud about, that people now see much broader choices available.
I fully agree. You're mentioning mistakes you did in the first year. Can you just briefly remember which ones those were, and how would you do it again and avoid them?
Well, I think the first year was unbelievably hard, largely because we didn't really know the right route to go to try and raise money. So we, I think, just targeted the wrong kind of people. We weren't very clear on our story. We were a bit naive in how we went about it, and we probably didn't go and seek the right kind of advice and input. So we could probably have made that really painful process of raising money a bit easier on ourselves. It really did take pretty much a whole year to do, and that was tough. But we grew up a lot from doing that. I think the other more sort of broad thing, though, is, and we particularly learned the hard way in the first years, was people. And every time we've hired someone and not been 100% sure they were the right hire, or where we said, well, we've seen 10 people, they're the best person we can find, it's just never worked. And we've learned to set the bar for hiring really high and to focus relentlessly on hiring the best possible people we can. Because if you don't do that and you compromise too quickly, or you make a choice about hiring someone because you just want to get someone through the door, or you don't see enough candidates, our experience has been that's a bad route to go. And I certainly always encourage people, hold out for the right person. Don't make a decision too soon. For us, we're a people business. You know, our assets walk out the door at the end of the day. So having the best people we can is absolutely critical, and the right culture is also fundamental. Having people who can work as a team, having people who see that they're there to be part of that, not to over promote themselves, but to collaborate with colleagues. People who are going to add something to our business, not just academically or intellectually in what they bring in technical skills, but how they're going to add vibrancy to the business. How are they going to help strengthen what we do? Those things we've learned to focus on as much as the technical skills, because they are absolutely critical.
Yeah. You talk on hiring. How much time did it take you to figure out your culture? you were young guys. Did you know instantly what the culture you want to have, or you had to learn a little bit?
I'm not sure we would have been able to articulate what the culture was, but the things that we realized very early on that were going to be a big differentiator for us were focusing on the customer absolutely relentlessly. I think, particularly in fund management, most fund management companies think that it all revolves around the fund managers and that they are the only people who really matter. And we realized very quickly, actually, for us, the key strength was going to be distribution. If you can't distribute your products, you can't persuade anyone to invest in them, you're not going to build a business. And so we had to get out there and build a team that was capable of going out to sell our products. And that meant we needed different types of skills. We needed people who were great communicators, who were willing to roll up their sleeves at a time when we didn't really have much to offer and get out on the road. We all had to do that, to go and talk to financial advisors around the country to explain what we're doing. Not an easy thing to do if you're hiring people who want to sit at a desk with lots of support around them. We realized that hiring people coming out of very big companies where they were used to lots of infrastructure, you know, PAs and nice comfy existence in their own office, all that kind of stuff, those things just weren't going to be part of Octopus. So today, everyone has the same desk. We all sit in an open plan layout. We don't have that much in the way of support. People kind of do things themselves. We need people who work for us to be able to make things happen, not just simply kind of funnel stuff around from one layer of management up to another. And so that sort of led its way to a culture where we have lots of can-do sort of people. People need to be flexible. They need to be able to change. They need to be able to work in teams. They need to be good communicators. All of those things, they sound a bit trite, but if you get it wrong and you start hiring people who don't fit that mold, it doesn't really work. And we've found that a culture where everyone feels part of it, they believe in the mission. You can never communicate too much with your staff. They always want to know what's going on. We've realized that the more you explain what the vision is and you keep banging on about it so that people really get it, that is a really powerful thing to do too. And I think there have been years when we've probably underinvested in doing that, and we've had to correct that. But fundamentally, to me, if you have everyone feeling part of the business, then you can grow much more quickly. And that's also meant things like share options and equity and so on. Pretty much 80-85% of people in the business save money out of their salary every month in our share save scheme to buy shares every year, which I think is a really high figure for a business with 700 people. And also, we give everyone options, and that's really important to have that breadth throughout the business, so everyone feels attached to it and part of it, rather than simply saying that we'll only allocate options to a small number of very senior people. We want everyone to feel that they are owners of the business, and you can see the difference in behavior, that people care about it. They talk to their friends, their family about the business in a different way because they feel that they have a greater level of attachment.
Yeah, there's a question here. Let's take it right now. Why did you start Octopus? What was the big pain you wanted to solve?
Really, I suppose we saw in late 1999 the fund management industry was being kind of taken in a direction that we didn't necessarily feel totally comfortable with. So remember, that area was all about the tech boom. NASDAQ was soaring to highs. And we saw the fund management industry raising lots of money into technology funds. Yet the fund managers putting that money to work were saying, well, this is crazy, valuations are so high, this is going to end up losing clients' money. And yet the power of the marketing teams won out over the fund managers' view that the market was overheated. And so in the end, lots of money was raised by the industry, and it was the unsuspecting clients who got burned in the end. And so that just felt to us like an industry that had sort of lost its way. What was it really there for? Was it to be as big as possible and make as much money as possible, or to really try and deliver products that were going to work for their clients? And so we saw an industry in a bit of flux, and we wanted to try and build a fund management company that did things differently, that really cared about its customers, that thought hard about the kind of products it was going to launch, and that also went into sectors that maybe were a bit unloved. So smaller companies in most big fund management companies tends to be a bit ignored. We wanted to, again, choose to really focus on that. So that was where we started. And then over the years, that model has evolved into a presence in areas like renewable energy, where we're the biggest investor in solar farms in the UK. We build lots of healthcare infrastructure, things like doctors' surgeries and care homes. You know, these are real assets. They're going to be around for a long time. This is not about having staff and managers and having their photo on adverts in the tube. Our teams are large. They work as teams. They feel like teams. And it's not about any one person. Everyone in those teams knows that their success depends on them all working closely together. not on having one person who's got a supposed great track record that everything revolves around, who comes knocking on your door every year wanting to be paid more and more money, and who, if he leaves, takes his track record with him, and then it becomes, you've not got anything. Instead, we wanted to build a company that did things very differently, and I think we've stayed true to that over the years.
When you were starting, the biggest pain probably was, apart from hiring, to get some funding. And you were young guys. I can imagine it was very hard to convince people to give you money to invest in you. And you managed to raise 2 million, you said? And
yeah, it was 2 million that we raised in that first year. Yeah.
From many people?
About 80 or 90 people. So we went to friends and family, certainly exhausted their patience. We tried to network our way to people who might invest. And in the end, we raised money in everything from £1,000 or £2,000 to one or two really brave people who invested 200,000. We didn't have any conventional VC investment. We tried, not very effectively. We had a few people who wrote back telling us never call us again, or we've shredded your business plan, or things like that. I think because we weren't great at articulating what our vision was back then. We had passion and determination, enthusiasm, had lots of that, but we hadn't really understood quite what we were going to do. We sort of left our jobs and set up Octopus, and then we had to evolve into thinking what actually was it all going to be about. And that took a bit of time. But over the first year or so, we started to get there. We tried a few things. I think we've been good at being willing to try new things, even if we're not sure they're going to work. Clearly, some things have, but there have been plenty of product ideas we've had over the years that haven't worked out. But we'll never stop trying new things. I think that's a big part of our culture today, is to create an environment where everyone feels able to suggest ideas, and they're not going to get told, that's a stupid idea, but actually we're going to embrace their ideas and engage with them. And some of the things we've done more recently have come about because in some cases it's been some of the youngest members of our team who've had the most inspirational ideas about new things that we could be doing. And that's really powerful if you can keep creating that kind of environment.
Yeah. Most of the young companies or big companies, when they were small, when they were starting, they have not been perfect. We can still Google the first deck of Uber or Airbnb and how unsuccessful they were at raising funding. What kept you going? How did you, despite those many no's from investors, what made you believe that this can be something bigger?
I think probably it was a bit of pride. We certainly didn't want to have to go back to our old employer and say, can we have our job back? I think they'd also been pretty clear they weren't going to give us it back anyway. I think also we were really lucky. There were three of us. If you're setting up a business, it's a really lonely experience. It's very difficult. No one else, particularly back then, quite understood what we're going through. I think our families sort of got it, but I wasn't from a family where people had set up businesses before, particularly certainly, my dad had worked for one organization all his career, so he was supportive, but couldn't relate to it. But I think we spurred off each other. So, we sat around in my lounge, and then in a little office where we rented a corner of an office from a friend of mine who ran a business above Cost Cutter in Farringdon, and we sat there pretty much saying to each other, we've got to make this work, we've got to keep going. We can't just go down the pub, we've got to just work really hard and keep going and not be tempted to give in too soon. I think people often, and I see even now when we're trying to do something new, the temptation is to try it for a little bit, and then if it's not working, stop. And actually, we found often with new products, it's only 9-12 months in that you see the potential start to come through. And I think people sometimes don't give it enough time. They stop too soon. So we, as a three, we call it the Terminator Gene. You just absolutely got to be relentless. You've got to be willing to keep going, even when everyone else around you tells you it's a silly idea. If you really believe in what you're doing, then I think you have a far higher chance of success. And we didn't quite know what we're trying to do, but we certainly believed that we had the opportunity to do something.
Yeah. You also invest in other companies, a VC arm, a VC fund. How do you distinguish from somebody who believes in the idea and can make it from somebody who is delusional and should give up? Where is the line?
Yeah, and I think you're always trying to back really great teams who've got a really strong vision, a compelling proposition. But in the end, quite a few of the businesses that we've backed that have been successful have actually found their success hasn't necessarily come from what the idea was that was in their deck a few years before. I think the best businesses are ones that are flexible and adaptive, and they can spot a glimmer of success in what they're doing, but recognize the changes they've got to make to evolve. So really, we're looking for people who have that passion and that dream and that vision, but also where we think the team collectively is really strong, and where we think they are going to have the skills and the adaptability and the strength required to keep changing and shaping what they do to find where the success is going to come from. I think you can get sucked into a trap of overanalyzing things and trying to make decisions off the back of loads of data that may not exist or may take ages to obtain. And certainly in terms of how we've grown Octopus, the best choices we've made have tended to come from things where we're backing our instincts and trusting our judgment rather than because there's a lot of data that's telling us it's the right thing to do. And I think the same is true of any type of investing, really. It's, you know when you've come across people who are just exceptional, people who really wow you. And we've been fortunate enough that our ventures team has backed some businesses that have gone on to be really successful. They've gone on to where the businesses have been sold to, Microsoft or to Google or Twitter. We had a dog food business recently that was bought by Nestle. Success can come in all sorts of different ways. It can come in sectors that you think are not the most exciting, but if you can bring a new spin, a new perspective, and you can show how ideas from other sectors can be put to bear, then there's opportunities all over the place. And I think often people say to us, well, I haven't got a good idea of what I want to do. Well, actually, most companies are not necessarily doing anything unique. There's nothing totally unique about what Octopus does. There are loads of fund management companies. Our energy supply business that we set up 2 or 3 years ago, there are 80 or 90 energy supply businesses out there now. Lots have been set up over the past 2 or 3 years. What I think has worked for us has been the right people, the right drive, relentless focus on the customer, all of those kind of things which are part of the sort of ingredients that I think are key, rather than necessarily having anything that's, patent protected or anything that's totally unique. So I think many businesses out there, it's about executing really, really well and doing something where you've got a bit of an insight, a bit of a vision, and then getting on with it and not stopping and really driving hard.
Yeah. So Octopus is ultimately about fund management, and for having a good fund, you need to fundraise. How did you change your fundraising strategy over the years?
So we started out very much with a focus on UK retail investors. So we recognize that IFAs are always on the lookout for interesting products to talk to their clients about. I don't think anyone goes to an IFA to say, I want to invest in a Japanese equities fund. It's just not how most individuals think. What they do is they go to an IFA with a problem like they just inherited some money, or they're 80 years old and they've not done any estate planning, or they just sold their business and they want to invest the proceeds, or they want advice on capital gains tax or something like that. And so we developed a range of products that met those needs. They provided solutions. And I think for any business, thinking about what is it you do that provides the solution is really critical. To us, that retail channel has been really powerful. I think we've got one of the best distribution teams amongst any size fund management company targeting UK IFAs. We spent 18 years building that. Every year, we raise more and more money through that channel. But the last couple of years has also been about expanding into new areas. So for our renewables team, for our healthcare infrastructure, for our ventures team, all those are areas where increasingly global institutions are interested. Pension funds from around the world are interested. So I spend now probably half my time out of the country meeting investors around the world in places like Korea and Japan and Australia and Middle East. I try to go to each of those maybe 4 or 5 times a year. It means a lot of travel, but for us, it's the big next phase of how we're going to grow the business is attracting investment from those big global pension funds who see the UK as a really attractive place. They clearly have some questions and reservations over Brexit, but fundamentally, they see the UK as an attractive place to deploy capital. And I hope in 5-10 years' time, we'll be able to say we're still raising lots of money from the UK retail channel, but we've also figured out how to crack the pension fund route as well.
Yeah. When you had a prep call, I can feel that customer service and being passionate about customers' interest is really important for Octopus. How does it translate into the daily business of running Octopus?
Well, I think the key thing to me is you can't set out customer service in a rule book. You can't just put it in a handbook and give it to someone and say, follow those rules, you'll do a good job. What you've got to do is hire people who've got those instincts in their DNA, who can talk about things they've done in the past that show they really think about customers, they understand how to communicate, they have some empathy, and then create the conditions where people feel empowered to do the right thing. We have some really cool examples of things where we never knew what they were doing, but months later we get a letter from a customer telling us about something that one of our team members has done. And you think, wow, that's really imaginative, really creative. And they've gone out of their way to do something that has absolutely wowed that customer. And we had a 22-year-old on our customer service team a couple of years ago, first job he'd ever done. He took a call from a blind potential customer. He said, I'm really interested in one of your products. Can you tell me about it? Have you got any information? Have you got a Braille edition? And we said, well, no, we don't, I'm sorry. This is going back a few years. And that guy then went home, he took a copy of the brochure home, he recorded it onto a CD or something, himself in his own time, he hadn't told anyone he was going to do. He sent it to the client, who then was so impressed that they called us months later, after they'd invested, just to say what had happened. And that person didn't do it because his manager told him to, or because he just did it because he thought it was the right thing to do, and had that bit of inspiration. And creating that kind of passionate engagement with your customers, you can sort of create the conditions. You can't teach the minutiae of it, but you can hire people who really think in that way, and then you can make clear these are the sort of behaviors and styles that we absolutely want from people who work here.
That's a great story. Now tell us something more about Octopus. So we have multiple funds, right? So you have a VC arm, you have an energy arm, a healthcare arm. How does it work and how is it structured?
Over the last couple of years, as the business has grown, we've recognized what you have to do is create an environment where things can get done quickly. So I think as businesses grow, there's always a temptation that, or a worry, you start to slow down in bureaucracy. You know, what used to work really efficiently when you had 50 people doesn't work when you have 500. And so we have changed things a bit. We have divided up into essentially separate businesses with CEOs of each of those arms who have a lot of autonomy to get on and run their team and grow their team. We are very clear about the culture and the values and things that are important to us. We set targets every year, but then we help work with them to allow them to have the space to get on and deliver without everything having to flow up to the top and back down again for decisions to be made. And we found that works a lot better. Things happen. Teams do more creative things. They are quicker. And people in the teams feel like they've got more control over their own destiny. And so by having a healthcare team that can really take advantage of the demographic opportunities, having a renewables team that is really focused now on where are the opportunities going to be to keep taking the expertise we've developed in UK solar and putting that to work internationally. We opened an office in Melbourne earlier this year. We've now got 8 people in Australia looking to do solar investments down there. And that came about because a young member of the team started talking about it and kept on going on about, well, we should be down there. Despite having more land and more sun than we have here, Australia's a bit behind the UK in solar rollout. And so we said, okay, great idea. Do you want to be part of that team? And that guy and half a dozen others relocated to Melbourne at the start of the year, and we're now starting to do deals there. So, growth can come about if you make clear to people that we're always open for ideas about how to do things. We'll back people. We're only in renewables in the first place because one of the young fund managers many years ago, in about early mid-2010, started talking about how solar farms are being rolled out around Europe and how there'd been a tariff change in the UK and how opportunities were emerging here. I'd never heard about that. It certainly wasn't part of any master plan we had to go into renewables. But he kept talking about it, and it became clear, yeah, that could be a really good fit for the values we had as a business, an area where we could build a big presence. And so that guy has now, he created that team, he's grown it, he's now got 50 or 60 people in that area. So we'll back people and help them grow individually and help them build teams where we can see a logic and a fit. We don't want to be doing 20 things and do most of them badly. We want to focus our efforts on a small number of areas. But it's all about the people and empowering them and having our businesses in these, I don't really like the word silos, but that sounds like they're way too separate. We're all in the same building. We're over 3 floors of a building in Holborn Circus. But if you empower people and give them real autonomy, there's often no limit to what they can achieve. Yeah,
that's one thing you do, and you also do something else, which is, to me, really interesting. You mentioned earlier on the call, and you mentioned that you have this official support structure for supporting entrepreneurship. How does it work?
Yeah, there are a couple of different strands to this. First thing we've done a couple of years ago is create what we call Octopus Labs, which is essentially our in-house IT tech development arm. It's about 120 people. It's focused on a couple of things: developing new products that we can launch, but also developing new systems and IT capabilities to use in-house. But the thing that I think has been really exciting more recently is we've launched something called the Octopus Springboard, which is about saying to people, anyone in the business could become an entrepreneur themselves. Many people have got really creative ideas, but they say, well, I've got a job, I've got rent to pay, I'm not sure if I can take the risk or want to take the risk, but they've got a passion, and we're trying to make it easy for people to actually implement that and have a go. So we've said to people who work at Octopus, we'll back you with, we'll pay you a small salary for 3 or 4 months if you want to go and have a crack at setting up your own business. We'll support you all the way, we'll do what we can to help you and pass on ideas and share contacts and so on. If it doesn't work, you can come back and do your job. We'll keep it for you.
It can be any idea. You have to approve the idea?
No, it doesn't have to be anything to do with fund management or energy. It could be anything. In fact, lots of the ideas we're hearing from people are all sorts of things, but they're things they're passionate about or where they think there's an opportunity to do something. What we're simply trying to do is create an environment where they can have a go without having to worry about how they're going to pay their rent or worrying that if they leave, they may never, and it doesn't work, they may struggle to get another job. We're trying to say, create a kind of safe environment for people to have a go. And I'm not sure many companies think that way. Most companies kind of want to jealously guard their staff. They want to encourage them to leave. But actually, for us, if we can encourage, and there's a part of the sort of legacy of having a load of people go off and set up their own businesses, that'd be really great. Over the years, we've seen it happen once or twice. But we thought it's about time we created a bit more of an organised program to help make it easy for people and take away some of the barriers that people often talk about in terms of why they haven't been able to set up their own business.
So in the worst case, they just learned some lessons, so that they are actually better employees, entrepreneurs, because they've learned a lot, even when they failed.
Well, I'm sure lots of people in the room will know you learn so quickly, you learn so many new skills, you overcome so many challenges when you have a crack at setting up your own business. And even if it doesn't work as you hoped or planned, my view is you'll be way more successful in life from having had a go. Clearly, often, lots of people then have a go later on, or try something else later in life, and you will have learned so much, it will be that much easier. So, to me, there's not much downside of trying. Lots of our most successful people in Octopus, they're the most flexible ones, they're the most hardworking, they're the quickest moving, because they've had experience in an early stage business themselves. And it's one of the things that we've realized looking to hire people, it's a really great strength if people have seen life in a fast-moving early-stage company themselves.
I agree. Let's talk about your VC part for a minute. So you invest in UK companies or European companies?
Yep. Most of them are UK. We can do European, but typically such a strong base of businesses in the UK that's where we focus our time.
Yeah. And you invest from seed stage all the way to 5 million?
Yep. Really, we're trying to find businesses that we can back from a pretty early stage and then keep backing as the business grows and develops. That's what's really powerful to us is working with entrepreneurs, helping them to fulfill their own dreams and ambitions and making sure that we can support them on that journey. So our venture capital trust is able to do seed stage, £500,000 type of rounds, and then keep backing a business several more times, I think up to about a limit of 5 million. And then we have some institutional funds that can back businesses with 10 or 20 million pound rounds after that. So if we can work with teams where over 3, 4, 5 year period we can deploy money 4 or 5 times as the business grows, that's great. Equally, some businesses will have been sold along the way, some businesses may not make it, but to spot businesses that have that ability to scale and to go international is what we're really looking for. And compared to a decade ago, we see way more ambitious entrepreneurs now than we did back then. I think that's partially because the world has changed. It's partially because I think availability of capital has got better. And to us, it's also about trying to create the right support mechanisms. So we've got half a dozen people in the States whose job is not to raise money, not to do deals there, but just to help businesses we back here enter the US market. And there's a lot of kind of shared learnings and knowledge that we're trying to bring to bear from all the other entrepreneurs we've worked with and what we have learned, what they've learned, pooling all of that knowledge and helping our businesses grow as fast as they can, not just here, but internationally.
So you're helping them, and this is industry agnostic, or are you focusing on certain industries, like energy and health?
Yeah, for our ventures team, we look at tech businesses, we look at tech-enabled, we look at consumer. Really, we're pretty agnostic. We're trying to find great teams. And success for our ventures teams come in all sorts of different sectors. I mentioned earlier about dog food. Not the most sexy of ideas, but a really compelling business that was grown really quickly by using brilliant technology and a great consumer proposition. I think there's loads of other sectors where there's the same kind of opportunity, and we're pretty open-minded. To me, it's more about the team and the quality of people. In the end, every early stage business has got to have that right combination of skills and passion and the idea. And if you don't get all those things right, it's not going to work.
Yeah. How do you find these upcoming entrepreneurs you invest in?
Well, I think it's through a whole bunch of different routes nowadays. We've been active in smaller companies now for 15, 16 years. So we have some entrepreneurs who we've now backed maybe on their third business, because they've gone through that kind of cycle of building a business and selling and taking a bit of time off, and then they come back to us again. So, and that spawns a broader network of people who've been in a team at a business that we've backed, and then a few years later want to set up their own business and come and talk to us. But I think it's equally through university spin-outs, it's through a whole manner of routes. One of the things that I really like as an example is someone who was, I think, a member of the Oxford University Entrepreneurship Club. And one of our guys went to give us a talk there many years ago. And 2 or 3 years later, that person graduated and they came knocking on our door saying, I've left now, I've had an idea, I'm setting up a business, can I come and talk to you about raising money? And they've gone on to build a really cool business. And they came to talk to us because they remembered many years ago hearing one of my colleagues speaking to them. So those kind of routes are important. But generally the London ecosystem is really enormous now, and we see a lot of businesses, we have a lot of things come our way, but the great thing is the quality is so high nowadays. That's really just kept on going up and up. The level of businesses, the level of thought people are putting into what they're doing, and how they're going about it, and the ambition in particular is so exciting.
I have a question here on Slido about what do you look for in a founder that will be successful? What is the key trait that you think they have?
I suppose what we've seen, particularly from running Octopus, and I guess more broadly from the businesses that we back, really people who are willing to back themselves, who are absolutely convinced about what they're doing, who can get on and make things happen, who bring not just the passion, but they bring the insight, they bring that real drive. I talked earlier about the Terminator Gene, the kind of never stop sort of phenomenon. I think that is absolutely fundamental. I think also people who can work at the right kind of pace, people who are flexible. Most businesses evolve a lot and find success in a slightly different way to what they originally thought. So people who can spot how they need to change things. I think people are also brave and who recognize they may not have everything right with their team, or who are willing to make changes to their team's composition. All those things come together. It's quite hard to define, but over the years our team will have met thousands of entrepreneurs, so you sort of hone a view of, you see it when you know it when you see it.
Yeah. Over the years, your role as a founder probably changed. What do you see as your main objective for the company? What is your key role right now at Octopus?
There's a few things I spend most of my time focused on. One is talking to institutional investors about what we do on the fund management side. The other is really thinking about how we're going to grow the business, looking for new opportunities and thinking about how we can make that happen. So I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, we thought we'd really like to have an energy supply business in the group, wanted to build one. That was partially because we thought the energy sector was as broken as financial services is in terms of poor customer outcomes, a massive opportunity, a sector that impacts everyone. And we were lucky enough to have that idea that we wanted to build a business of that type, but then to also be introduced to someone who we thought was a brilliant entrepreneur who had the same vision. And so we said to him, right, why don't you come and join Octopus and get on and build our Octopus Energy business? And it's sort of grown from there. So trying to find people who can join the business, who bring something new, something different, or who can help us really expand or go into new areas is always really important. I spend a lot of my time externally focused now on talking to people about all sorts of different things. And the third thing really is talking to the government and trying to make sure that we can play our part in trying to help make sure there's the right conditions for entrepreneurship to thrive. It's clearly lots of organisations who've got views on how to do that, and we try and work with them and others in making sure that there is that proper understanding in Westminster. The thing that I always find really powerful is just the strength at which the high-growth small business community, which we define as businesses with turnover between £1 and £20 million that are growing at 20% a year. That's only 1% of all businesses in the UK, but they create about 25% of all new jobs. So for any politician, the number one thing, in my experience, they care about is job creation. You know, if people have got jobs, they're happier in life, clearly, and that's something that politicians really, really care about. So helping them understand how they can create the conditions to create more of these high-growth small businesses and make sure they grow as quickly as possible. We found a really receptive audience in Westminster to ideas and solutions for how to make that happen, and I probably spend 20% of my time focused on that.
Yeah, so that's how we met in the House of Parliament. You just announced 2 new papers, right? One is, which is Octopus supported. One is on women leadership, and then on tax. Why do you think it's so important for a private company like Octopus to keep helping the government understand the issues of entrepreneurship?
Well, I think too often it's easy to just complain about things, and really I think it's much better to go with solutions and ideas and also some data to try and support that. So working with the parliamentary group on entrepreneurship, you know, our support of that group is really to try and help make possible some of those things. So the research into female founders was to us really important. I think clearly been some good progress on that front, but a long way still to go. And that report highlighted that for many women, they find it not easy to raise money. They find that there are barriers and you know, a landscape that doesn't necessarily work that well. Our ventures team has put in quite a lot of effort to change and improve. We're really proud of the fact that 1/3 of the businesses we've backed over the past 3 or 4 years have had a female founder. But I think there's probably more that we and the rest of the industry can do to try and make sure that we're capitalising on the opportunities that are coming out of you know, the enormous base of women now setting up businesses. And it's the same for research into tax. What can be done to streamline the system to make it easier to set up a business so there's less red tape, it's quicker and easier to run your business so you can spend most time growing it and not worrying about how you're going to deal with all of the government reporting and everything. And those are areas that we found, yeah, it's easy for government just to think that everyone who goes to talk to them usually goes with a problem and they don't normally go with solutions. And so we've tried to come up with some sensible proposals for how things could be improved that are designed to be things that realistically a government could adopt.
I agree, and I love it because it's instead of complaining, it's good to just ask people about solutions, suggestions. How do you propose to solve this problem? That's awesome. At the beginning of the interview, you mentioned that you probably didn't have the right mentors at the beginning. Who mentors you now, and who do you mentor?
I guess, have been fortunate that we've had a range of people who've given us loads of support over the years. For me, in particular, we were very lucky that about a year in, we met a guy called Matt Cooper, who was an American who was running Capital One in the UK, being one of their founders, seen enormous growth in that business over the 10 years leading up to 01, 02. And what he brought was a real level of encouraging us to not just grow a business like this, but saying, why can't you grow like this? Why can't you double every year? Why are you looking at... And it just changed how we thought about what was possible for the business. And that mindset shift that he helped trigger was really, really powerful. There are other people we work with who are brilliant at giving us input on marketing, branding, things like that. And so rather than having one person who I see as a mentor, we have a range of people who help in different kind of areas. For me and for Simon, the other founder, we spend a lot of our own money investing in early stage companies, what we're passionate about, what we're excited and interested in. And so for some of those companies, we help the founders where we can. We're absolutely not saying we have all the answers, but we do have some of our own experiences that I think we try and share where appropriate. And there's some really talented people who've got great ideas. And we're sharing some of our stories or helping be a sounding board, I hope is useful to them.
Yeah. So 18 is on and you're still going strong. What keeps you going? What gives you energy to keep growing Octopus and keep expanding on the mission of the company?
I suppose for us, we decided really early on we were not building Octopus to try and sell it. We wanted to build a business that we could keep on growing. And maybe that partially came just because we started it when we were pretty young, and so we didn't have any massive need to sell a business quickly. We wanted to see whether we could build a really big business, and that's as true today as it was back then. We look at things in 3, 5, 10, 20-year sort of increments. We think very long term. We're a private company. Because we don't have any outside controlling shareholder, we can take that perspective. Flexibility has been really important to us, and we have a shareholder base that kind of understands that and really lets us get on with things. So going forwards, there's massive opportunity in the sectors we're in. Renewable energy, Bloomberg estimates it's going to be $7 trillion invested around the world in solar and wind farms over the next 20 years. Now, it's roughly equivalent to the entire market cap of the London Stock Exchange. It's a phenomenal amount of money. So for any fund manager looking at how to grow their business, the renewable sector's going to become really important. It is for us. We've got a head start over many other firms. We want to keep growing in those kind of sectors. And the biggest opportunity, I think, really is our energy business. Energy supply touches every household. So everyone in the UK is a potential customer. That's really exciting. It's the first time in 18 years, really, that we've had a business within the group that could target every household. And where you look at the big six, they still supply about 80% of households. Their tariff is £200 or £300 more than us and most of the other challengers. So there's an opportunity to get out there and tell that story. My colleagues who run the energy business, they regard themselves really as running a technology business, where technology is what powers the customer service, it's what makes it scale, and it's also where any new entrant has a big advantage over the older legacy businesses that, as is the case in energy, it's true of most other sectors, it's really hard to be an incumbent because you cannot evolve your business in the way you need to quickly enough when you've got new entrants who are doing things differently. And the energy sector, to us, is really exciting because of the changes going through. It's not just selling energy to you. The electrons you get out your plug are the same no matter who you buy it from, but it's about how the energy market is going to evolve. And that, to me, is a monstrous opportunity. Think of how things like electric vehicles are going to interplay, how the charging of that's going to be controlled, how we can optimize how we consume electricity. The role of an energy supplier in 5 or 10 years' time is going to be so different to what it is today. And we want to create a highly digital business that can be right at the leading edge of playing into that.
I totally agree. And when it comes to energy and technology, where do you see the disruption coming from?
Well, I think it's mostly from people who are looking at new ways of doing things, and not just in raw supply, but also, for example, we're doing a trial at the moment to look at how you can take electric vehicles and use the batteries to store energy at times when energy is cheap and sell it back to the grid when energy is expensive. This wasn't really possible 2 or 3 years ago. It is now. It's all about the software and the vehicles, and that's now real and it's happening. It's those kind of new ideas which are going to really transform the sector. We're doing that, but there's lots of other people trying to do it. And so you can never stand still. You always got to be challenge yourself. How do you think about your customers? How are you communicating? What are the solutions that people are going to need in the future? And what are you doing to plan for that? And the number of entrants, the energy sector 10 years ago had the big six and 1 or 2 others. Now it's got 80 or 90 companies in it. It's a really competitive sector. Lots of really talented people trying to build businesses. If we're going to be successful, we need to always keep on moving forwards, and we're determined to do that. But there are lots of other companies trying to do the same thing.
Very exciting. Let's take a few minutes to answer some questions from the audience. The first question is: can you really get a business seed funded with just slides, with just a presentation? What do you think?
Well, to me, actually, it's only my own personal judgment when I'm deciding how I invest or who I think is going to be successful. To me, it's the people and how they articulate their idea. Slides, and a basic plan's important, but I think great people can make things happen, and that's what I'm trying to assess. Partially because the things I've talked about, plans change, they evolve, and no business I've ever come across has ever just executed in line with what it predicted and hit its numbers. Things always take longer, they're harder, you always need more money. Those are just kind of the truisms of starting a business. And I think the best teams are the ones that are able to evolve and adapt.
So what are you looking for in a company when you think of investing? Is it a team? What else? The idea?
Yeah, usually an idea that I think can scale and is different. People who get technology, I think anyone who's running a business and doesn't really understand the role of technology in their sector is going to find things hard, because there will be others out there who are looking at bringing a more technologically driven approach to that sector. And I think we probably learned ourselves the hard way. I think up until 4 or 5 years ago, we probably underinvested ourselves in that, and we've had to change that because we realized even fund management was evolving really quickly. And I mentioned earlier the labs division we have that's really our way of having a very focused commitment to that. So yeah, to me that's the sort of range of things that are important.
Okay, next question is, how do you think the financial industry in the UK will be affected next year, post-Brexit?
Tough one, because even our politicians can't tell us. So,
do you think it'll happen?
I do, and I think, again, to me, I'm not spending my time, trying to stop something which is more about trying to make. Business people are really flexible and adaptable.
True.
Yeah, they have loads of things you have to overcome in running a business, and I think Brexit will be, one of those hurdles. I think the thing that is fundamental is access to skills and talent. Clearly, London has become such a broad and dynamic place on the back of that diversity and the range of skills and nationalities and so on. I think something like 40% of the businesses we've backed over the years have a non-UK founder or CEO. So you can see that diversity and breadth there. So I think if the government gets that you need to create the right conditions where businesses can access skills, and every time I talk to government, they tell us they get that and they hear that loudly. I think there's going to be a separation in the end between all the kind of political noise and rhetoric and what ends up happening. I think we may have a rocky, challenging few years, but the people best equipped to cope with that will be entrepreneurs who bring that kind of perspective that it's just another challenge you have to navigate your way around, rather than, as is the case with a lot of big businesses, they're sat there worrying that they've got a structure that is too inflexible. They are, head in sand about the challenges. Yeah. And, I think people who have a more can-do kind of perspective, which I think is people who naturally set about building their own businesses, I think will find ways of thriving despite that. That's
good. And as a matter of fact, the great companies, they start in tough times, Octopus included. So.
Yeah, we managed to resign from our jobs at Mercury the day NASDAQ peaked in early 2000.
Oh, you did?
So, we picked probably the worst possible time to start to build a new fund management company. But have we really worried? There have been recessions, there have been stock market crashes and things. But the day when you start using those as an excuse, I think is when you sort of lose touch with what's in your control. And that's what we focus on, things that we can do that will make a difference, rather than what's going on in the outside world, which we have no ability to control.
Yeah. Next question is from Dan Fiheny. Is Bitcoin digital money to complement and eventually replace the fiat network? What do you think?
I really don't know, actually. I think the world is changing so quickly. I think it's hard to see exactly where things will get to. I think also the pace of change of things can suddenly change, and what seems a bit wacky when it first comes out suddenly gets adopted, and a few years later it just becomes entirely normal.
Yeah.
And it's happened in so many different areas, even relatively niche things at the time everyone thought were jokes. You remember the day when Amazon said they were going to use drones to deliver parcels? Everyone thought that was just some sort of April Fool's joke. And actually, things which initially seem unlikely end up becoming absolute facts. And things I do think will happen. I think the electric vehicle uptake will be way quicker than lots of people think. I tell my kids, you're never going to drive a petrol car. In fact, they may never drive at all.
I agree.
Who would have thought that, 5 or 10 years ago? So things that seem unlikely, I think sometimes can end up becoming quite dominant.
Sure.
With Bitcoin, personally, I don't know.
What's your stance on cryptocurrencies and blockchain? Does it in any way affect your strategy of how you fundraise? Do you plan to open a crypto fund, for example?
No, I don't think we'll be doing that, largely because most of what we do is focused on real assets and areas where we can really invest in very long-term things and where we can be a real leader. So it wouldn't really be one for us.
Okay, one more question is from Anonymous, and this is, tell us about the riskiest opportunity you took and how did it fare?
Good question. I think there've been a lot of things which you never quite know what risk you're taking sometimes. Probably most people we knew would say when we left our jobs and when the chief exec of the business we left in 2000 said, that's never going to work and don't come back and ask us for your job back when it doesn't work. Yeah. So that was kind of really supportive. But I think often so we've made lots of decisions over the years on the back of instinct and gut feel. We're not particularly people who like reams of analysis, because I think often that takes too long, and you just don't have the data there. We prefer to make decisions on the back of where do we think there's big opportunities, where we think we have a chance of success, and then we find the best people to go after it. So the energy business came about for exactly that kind of reason. We didn't overanalyze it to death. We just saw instinctively 23 million households, 20 million of whom are getting a bad deal, and customer service reputation is terrible. That has got to be an opportunity to do something about that. So that kind of, is it a risk setting up an energy business? Everyone told us it was, and we're going to burn a lot of money doing that. But if you do it differently, and you think about customers, all those things I've been talking about, then we were really convinced that we had a chance of being successful. Were we sure it was going to be successful? No, absolutely not. If it had gone wrong, it would have been a really expensive mistake. But you have to kind of trust your judgment and instincts.
True. Chris, you have been awarded the title of Entrepreneur of the Year last year. How did it change your entrepreneurship life? Did you become more famous, or did you feel more responsibility since you've been awarded that? What do you think about such awards in the marketplace?
Well, I think for Simon and I to win that award last year was great recognition. That was really wonderful. To me, it's mostly recognition, though not of us, but of what the 700 people who work at Octopus have done collectively, and it absolutely is a team effort. We got to go to Monaco to represent the UK in the EY kind of world event, where they have people from, I think, 46 different countries.
In Monaco, right?
Yeah, it's in Monaco every year. It's absolutely phenomenal experience to talk to people doing all sorts of incredible things all around the world. Some really amazing, humbling kind of stories that we heard from people, and just a great opportunity to talk to other people who often have overcome the same kind of situations, talk the same sort of language. That was great. And I think if we can use that award and the recognition from that to help to encourage other people to give it a go, it's certainly the best thing I've ever done in my life was being involved in starting up Octopus. It's been, amazing fun. We work pretty hard, but we love what we do. I learn every day, get to meet really interesting people, and I think the award has probably helped us open doors in some ways to meeting a whole new group of people that maybe we wouldn't have been able to talk to in the past.
Yeah. My last question is, how can we help you? How can we help Octopus?
Well, I think the first thing is, for our ventures team, we are always keen to talk to really talented entrepreneurs who have got a great story to tell about what they're trying to do. So by all means, please do get in touch either with me or go onto the team's website and get in touch with them. We would absolutely love to hear what you're doing and talk to you about that. If it isn't something we can back ourselves, then the team will have lots of ideas of who might be people that are worth talking to. So that's something we'd be keen to do. And I'm always happy to have a coffee with people who want to come and have a chat about things. And we're always keen to meet really talented people, even if you're not starting a business, but you're just interested in what we do, or think you might have a skill or want to come and join our team, then please do get in touch. Always absolutely delighted to talk to people.
So before we finish, we take 2 questions from the audience. If you have anything else you want to ask, let's do 2. Peter has the microphone here. Raise your hand if you want to ask something. Okay, Osmond, there you go.
Mario and Chris, thanks for the talk. Osmond here, Tech Citizen Meetup. Very challenging question of, I know you're expanding in Australia and America. A couple of very quick questions. One is, what advice would you give for companies expanding in? 2 is, should they consider non-USA countries to expand in, like Australia or Europe?
Yeah. For most of our ventures teams, investee companies, the US is always a really big decision, just because it's either, do you go into that market, it's so damn big, if you get it right, the rewards are enormous, but you've got to do it properly, and you can't do it half-heartedly. And we've found over the years, business has got to be utterly committed if you're going to enter that market. To us, we've gone into Australia, into the solar market there, because we think that's a market that's pretty much in the early days of the solar rollout. We've got 3 or 4 Australians in our team who know the local market there. They know the finance community. They know some of the developers. So it made sense for us to enter Australia. But for most businesses, for most conventional businesses looking to expand, the Australian market clearly a long way away and not that big. So typically, for most of our companies, it's a choice of what do they do in Europe, do they go into the US, and how do they tackle Asia, and what do they think about China? And it's those big decisions that are key.
Thank you. One more question is over there. Please stand up and tell us who you are.
Dan Feeney. I work in payments and trade finance, and you didn't mention much about fintech, but if we assume that data is the new oil driving all these platforms, how far ahead is China in terms of pulling away in terms of blockchain, AI, and IoT? Because it seems like they've got the talent, the money, and they're just pulling away from the West.
Yeah, I think they are really going at it incredibly quickly. They're really committed. I think the thing that tends to happen in Asia as well is people make long-term decisions. So I go to China occasionally. I go to Korea a lot more often, just because it's a market that suits us better for the pension funds we talked to there. And in Korea, they invest a lot in R&D. They're really committed to doing that in a way that I think in the West we've sort of lost sight of that a bit. So I think China in particular, other Asian countries, I think the acceleration of their capabilities is going to be really, really quick. And I think the West is going to wake up in 5 or 10 years' time and find that in all sorts of sectors we've fallen a long way behind.
I agree. R&D is really big. On this note, the audience, please join me in thanking Chris Hulatt from Octopus.